but
Yeah,
happy,
not good.
yeah, I'm super happy to have you on the show, Nick. Super excited to talk about the Weirdos, about your story in NFTs and what brought you there as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you started, how you got into it, and then we can also talk about your project later on.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so my name's Nick. On Discord and Twitter, I'm going by Cheadle, my handle, but yeah, most people know me doxed. There's some friends from real life in the space as well. So hi, I'm Nick Butterworth. I work for the Weirdos NFT full time. I have an advisory role on a project coming up from the UK as well called B-Side Studio, which is a music themed animation series of podcast comics and so on as well. But I'll come on to the Weirdos in a bit more detail in a minute as well. So that's kind of been my Web3 CV, but that only goes back 6 months like a lot of people in this space. On a personal note, I discovered NFTs back in December 2020. Like a lot of people, found it during the pandemic. One of my friends got me into NBA Top Shot, found my feet there, discovered NFTs through that. My passion outside of this space is sport, as you can probably see. Basketball. I used to play basketball as well, so it fit really nicely. But my first Ethereum NFT, I want to say, was back in March 21. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I picked up some 8-bit bit birds, I think they were called. It's like a cockatoo looking thing.
Nice.
It was the meta when everyone was just trying to repeat what CryptoPunks had just delivered in the space. And so like this, the second wave, if you like, the early 2021 boom. And this is before BAYC came along as well. So no one had really imagined what a community project really looked like at that point. So then I bought my first Bored Ape back in May last year. Sold that too early, bought some other things, and I've watched them slide towards zero over the last 12 months, like a lot of things. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely won some and lost some, and learned some pretty tough lessons in this space around patience, FOMO, but also just community building and community fundamentals, and what makes things stick and what makes people come together for a single cause or purpose. So that's kind of my personal story when it comes to trading and getting my feet wet in the space. But yeah, like I say, I jumped into Web3 full time in February this year. The very long story cut short on that was that, on a personal level, I was working in a real world finance career, have been for 20 years. I had what people would consider a very successful job in the real world, working in Premier League football in the UK. But on, being completely honest, I was very much going through the motions with my day-to-day work and losing my passion for what I was doing in my career and the reasons I was doing it, the pursuit of money over personal gratification.
Definitely.
That's quite a typical tale for people jumping into Web3. But as this was all going on, a university friend of mine spoke to me when I was on holiday back in February and needed some support over on the Weirdos. That was a project that he founded with a South African-based artist called Ghostbreath. And this is an adult animation-themed series as well. So Ghostbreath's phenomenal. He was discovered, if that's even the right phrase, by a couple of my friends from university. He was working by himself, pulling together a smaller series of animated characters around a very sort of tightly constructed world. And part of the sort of expansion of that project was bringing a couple of guys in from Web3, myself included later down the line, to really build out this world of the Weirdoverse and what that means and how we explore it as we work through this roadmap of ours. So that was quite a interestingly timed conversation, because I was looking for something else to do with my life. I wasn't quite clear where it was going to come from. My passion in NFTs and Web3 was growing and growing and growing, and here was an opportunity to go full all in, and I haven't regretted it since. It's been quite the ride in the last few months, but one which has completely opened up the other side of my brain. I've been working, as I say, for 20 years in a world of numbers, figures, projections, budgets, forecasts, and now suddenly it's animators, art projects, script writing, thinking about very much musical and artistic pursuit, and nothing to do with, in many cases, my training and my background, although much of it does come into the management of the company that now sits behind Weirdos. So quite an interesting shift on a number of fronts, but I've never been happier to get out of bed and go to work.
Wow, that's such
into my spare bedroom, I should say.
Yeah, love it. Love your story, and that's such an impressive, story. To be honest, on how you made this transition, and also you said that you're coming from a numbers background in finance, company building, and you said that this was a right decision for you to basically, follow your passion of maybe doing something on yourself, and it's like a whole another universe, being creative kind of, and then managing a Web3 company. How has it changed, or how has your life changed ever since? Like, how does it make you, let's say, happier, or has it, so maybe you can go on this question a little bit, because I think it excites me and also some of the listeners potentially. So I would love to learn more about this as well.
I think it comes down to learning. The summary of that, I've got to a place in my real life career where I had stopped learning in terms of how should we say, sort of formal training has long gone, and actually the further up the career ladder you go, the less it becomes about executing on the things that you're trained to do, and much more about leading and managing people. And my role in terms of learning had come more on the side of how you learn to lead and run with teams of people than actually imparting financial information and knowledge. So I'd gone away from that a long time ago, and actually doing something where I actually was able to get my hands dirty again and really learn from the beginning, and being a novice in a new space, just, started firing off all sorts of energy around my brain. So being in a place where I wasn't the expert in the room, I was there to listen and be told what to do and get shit done, actually felt quite, like a real shift for me, and a real wake up. So just being in spaces where I, like I say, was being given a chance to be creative as well, but it felt energizing. I'd not really had a chance to do anything on a creative front for the majority of my career, for good reason. You're an accountant, you're a finance director, your role is not to get creative. You might be asked to present, and you might be asked to, you can inject personality into what you do, but you're not really invited to step out of that lane unless you're supporting people with financial information. So it became, a much broader role in Web3 very quickly, because you're working in such a small startup context. So you have to step across and outside of your lane to get stuff done, and just plug holes as you grow. And a generative project rapidly grows, particularly in a bull market. When we were launching Weirdos back in April this year, you just have to step into all manner of different lanes, whether that's reviewing art, speaking and managing a community, basically talking, interviewing, being interviewed, thinking about creative roadmap options down the line, like games or animations, and thinking about how you pull all those threads together as well. It's just stuff that sits completely outside of most people's comfort zones, certainly from my industry or former background anyway. So just being given the opportunity to have responsibility for creative felt very exciting. Something which, as I say, had I not jumped across to Web3, there's a good chance I never would have given myself a chance to explore that side of my personality as well.
Yeah, so cool. I mean, I was also kind of working in project management, finance with banks and stuff, and I don't know, you follow this path that society kind of expects when you do have already started it in a certain path, and then you go on and work there, and maybe not even questioning your career, and then asking yourself, is it really what I want? And I think like taking this leap and then trying out what you enjoy in this moment, and then maybe making a career out of it, is pretty self-fulfilling, I guess, right? So really love that.
I described it as a midlife crisis when it happened initially. The idea of being, typecast and stuck in a career which actually you can't change because, as you say quite rightly, you become specialized. People expect certain skills from you. You get paid accordingly as well, and your lifestyle starts to fit around that. So it's not as simple as just quitting and starting something new, because that's tough, starting from the bottom rung and working your way up. Clearly, Web3 gave people opportunities to rapidly accelerate that development, because the space was just moving so quickly, particularly a year ago and a few months back. So it's difficult to do in traditional industries and suddenly say, I'm no longer an accountant, I'm no longer a finance person, I want to be a doctor. That just doesn't work. Certainly when you've started to build families and houses, mortgages, and real life stuff around your identity. So suddenly to turn away from it and say, I'm going to give something else a go, very much feels like either a holiday romance or a midlife crisis, or combination of all of the above. But there's real credibility to the long-term career in Web3, and I would hugely advocate anyone listening to, even in the depths of this market, if there are role opportunities where you can plot a path to being paid on a regular basis, you will learn an enormous amount from the kinds of people that are operating in this space. So I would wholeheartedly go for it.
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, if you can get paid, and I mean, in Web3, people live all around the world. You're not particularly bound to coming to the office. You work from home, work from, co-working space. And if you can make it happen to get paid, as you said, on a regular basis, then why not give it a shot? And I mean, I think the longer you stay in a particularly line or job, the harder it gets, as you said, right? Because the pay increases, you maybe have some responsibilities, you start a family, you have, And usually you also tend to attract this kind of people in your personal life. Usually you have like friends also kind of following let's say strict careers, and when you follow your passion, how was it kind of like accepted, or did you need to as you said, also midlife crisis, how did you explain yourself? Because
I mean, it's hard enough to explain that you've changed your career for anything, but for especially to people in my local area, my sort of circle of friends, people who are outside of the NFT space who don't understand what that is, let alone why you would quit something stable and secure for something nascent that clearly has high volatility, and I suppose even more so now that a global recession appears to be looming over most developed countries as well. So how can you justify that? Interestingly, people really did understand, and perhaps there's a degree of feeling a similar thing at our stage in life. I'm, without sort of age doxing, I'm at a stage where I've got a wife and 3 kids, and certainly further down the road than a lot of degens in Web3, should we say. But that group of people probably all have been in their industries and careers for a long time, and are doing it for the right reasons. They're providing for their families. They may even love what they do, but there's a lot of people who don't. But you have to go to work and get out of bed to pay bills, and the options to change that are not immediately obvious to most people.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why Web3 has been so exciting for so many people the last 18, 24 months. It's thrown open so many doors to people with traditional skills, from software development, finance, legal, art. The arts have been completely raided by Web3, and it's really transformed a lot of people's ideas of what's possible in their own lives. So to sort of just, to approach people and say, I've changed my career. People do worry about you. The initial reaction is that, are you okay? What happened? And the truth was I was okay, but I wasn't happy with what I was doing, and this gave me an opportunity to really just test the water if something else could work better for me. I think the honest truth is, if it didn't work out, I would have had to go back to a finance career with my tail between my legs, and still could if we ultimately all go to zero and the space moves on to something that I don't have any applicable skills to support. But it feels like we're still a very long way away from that being a reality, and there's still plenty of participants. There's still plenty of people who want to explore good quality use cases of NFTs. But it's quite an interesting subject, because I was having this conversation online actually yesterday, and I think if you go back 12 months, we didn't have to worry about these things. We didn't have to worry about what the use case of an NFT is, or whether or not it actually made sense to have an NFT in the ultimate product that you wanted to sell, because everyone else was buying it and then selling it to someone else for more money. And the greater fool theory applied at full throttle. You never really had to stop and think, hang on, is the NFT actually necessary here? What value does it add? What's it doing here that a traditional method of ownership or distribution can't do? And as we've lost that era of speculation, whatever you want to call it, suddenly everything gets pared right back to its essence and its question, which is actually really healthy. And it's a case now of having to go to market if you're selling something and say, this is why an NFT is really important to what I'm presenting to you, because if you don't have that, you're dead. You're completely not fit for the current market. And I think that's kind of where we're going to find ourselves. Now the tide's gone out, we're going to really see who actually had a real Web3 use case for their project. Did they just sell tokens because it was super easy to sell tokens? Yeah, in lots of cases, I'm sure that is absolutely the benefit of being well-timed. But actually, now that we've gone way beyond that stage, who's going to keep buying your NFTs, or who's going to buy the next set that you're going to launch? You're going to have to really clearly explain why it's essential that you sell an NFT to go with the utility or product or service that comes with ownership of that token, or why provenance of owning the thing that you're selling is really important. So whatever the use case is, there's going to be a magnifying glass really focused on the answers there, when before that was not the case. It was just a cool thing to think about in the future. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if, e.g., tickets were on the blockchain? We were able to, start thinking about things like property deeds and medical records and all these things that don't actually, when you really think about it, fit that well, unless you solve some other challenges that the real life methods of verifying ownership have already solved. So quite an interesting thing, because as we start now to move forwards without speculation and in a bear market, and thinking about how we're going to sell this stuff, people are really going to start getting quite skeptical as to whether you're delivering your product via the correct method. And Web3 won't be for every product. It won't make sense to necessarily sell every house via blockchain tech. I've had this thought for a while. In fact, one of my good friends in real life sent me a case of a property that was sold entirely through a land sale, I should say. It was sold entirely through NFTs, and I just couldn't help but think about the poor guy with a private key that might lose that one day, what happens to the land if he's hacked, or he forgets his seed phrase, or some other really difficult on-ramp conversation that we always have about Web3. What happens to that physical land? And then if the answer is solvable, then there was no provenance in the process of owning that token in the first place. So I feel like there's so much that needs to be solved before we start talking about really integrating Web3 into day-to-day lives. So I think people are going to start getting really challenged on this stuff, rather than just saying, hey, we're a cool Web3 project. But why are you? Why is it important that you have an NFT? What are you giving to us what ownership is important as a result of selling this product. So it feels really interesting to start thinking about that stuff. And partly why I'm, still here and still thinking about these things is because I think, that some people in this space are closer to the answers than others. So it's about finding those people and attaching yourself to them and falling in behind them and learning as much as you can.
True. Yeah, I love the saying and the picture you created with the tide basically the water going back and all the speculation vanishing. So people only are here to ask the tough questions, I guess. And projects really needing to justify themselves. Why are they on the market? What values are they, or what value are they creating? Why do they need a NFT in the first place? But when you launched your collection, The Weirdos, it was it wasn't full bear market, I guess, but in the beginning of the year, we could already kind of like see that the volume was going back. How was it? How was it for you? When have you started with your projects? Maybe we can move your project more into the spotlight now and talk about The Weirdos. How you started with that and what kind of idea you wanted to bring to life, and how this passion project came onto life, and how you found also the team you are building this with.
Well, I have to give all the artistic credit to Ghostbreath, our artistic director, core founder, CEO, everything. Ghostbreath is the real artistic driving force behind the project, and without him, it really doesn't exist. I'll be the first to admit I'm fully fungible, and most of us are. The services that we put around creatives can be done by other people, but obviously we have a connection and a passion for Ghostbreath's work, and really wanting to see it not just come to life, but being put in people's hands from an ownership point of view. That's what really got me excited as a collector initially. So as CryptoJack, my good university friend, started The Weirdos with Ghostbreath, there was only I think it was 112 characters from the original OG series 1, and he started out drawing one of ones, just hand drawn rather than generative pieces, and they were all accompanied by a rich biography, a description of the character and what makes them a weirdo. The whole sense of the weirdos is actually quite an interesting concept from Ghostbreath's brain. In essence, you've got a vision of the future, a very Orwellian style surveillance society where you've got a almost like a global state police called the state authority, who control everything about people's lives, their thoughts, their decisions, their work, their right to reproduce. This is the story of the Weirdos set 200 years in the future. And then you've got a counter-revolutionary group who decide they want to break out of this surveillance state, and they take themselves
maybe I can share my screen.
Here you go.
I love the art and stuff, so maybe while you're explaining it, it's nice to see the art, because I think, sorry to interrupt, by the way, I believe it's very outstanding, kind of something I haven't seen before, to be honest, because how funny they are, kind of.
I think Matt's Ghostbreath. Matt is a funny guy. He draws from lots of humorous and dark places in his brain, but also just influenced by lots of different cartoons and animations, not just from adult but childhood as well. So we're going back to the likes of The Simpsons here, Rick and Morty more recently as well, and Ghostbreath has Adult Swim credits in his background too. So this is very reminiscent of certain styles that you might have seen before, but I suppose the richness of the character development is quite interesting for an NFT project. You don't tend to get much of a backstory and biography to each of the individuals that will make up the core characters of the series that is in development and is part of our future. So quite appealing. It drew people in initially back in August, September, when series 1 was coming together. And I think
Nice.
what I found really interesting, and it's probably new at the time, but been done very well since by other projects, is how once people had bought a character from series one, and they were hard to come by. People were flying in and buying during that hype period of 2021,
Mm-hmm.
was how they adopted that character as their persona in Discord. So it was a very small community. You only had, like I say, just over 100 tokens you could buy at the time,
Yeah.
and you therefore couldn't sell to a mass audience. So it was this very close and tightly knit community, not mega active, but when people contributed, they often did it as the persona of the character that they bought. So you ended up with all this LARPing across the server with people taking on the personality or the presumed personality of their NFT.
Of
And they
course.
developed that character further than the bio. And that was cool. And then you started thinking, well, I own this character. It's part of something that's going to become a series of stories in the future. I get the chance to add some color and additional description to it.
Nice.
So it feels very Web3 in that I've got ownership.
Yeah.
I'm building alongside the artist, and I get to have a say in the additional context and background and personality that this character has. So that was what really bonded the initial community. And then series 2 came along,
Nice.
series 3, and that was at the turn of this year, January and February. And that really expanded on what we have here. So what you have on the screen is a real mixture of series here, but these are all core OG characters, or Genesis characters as we call them.
Nice.
They then moved into a generative project. So after this, we then released what was called Battle Royale, which was a generative series of the sort of the wider story around the Weirdoverse. So we've just touched on what the state was, which is this controlling surveillance police state. You have these revolutionary weirdos who want to live off grid and away from the clutches of the state. That's the guys on the left-hand side of the screen. And they come to battle over their ideologies. And a war breaks out 200 years in the future.
Okay.
So Battle Royale explores that war. So what you have in Battle Royale in the generative collection is you've got 14 factions, 7 factions that belong to the Weirdos, 7 which belong to the state, and they're all different backgrounds and cultures and inspirations. So within the Weirdos, you've got a whole range of guys from punks who have real sort of Mad Max vibes and are much more battle ready than, say, Starseed, who are spiritual and lean on the teachings of alternative therapies to give them power and bestow information on the rest of their co-weirdos. You've got the state where you've got these trained killbots who are sent into battle for the state, who don't want to get their hands dirty. You've got the ugliest part of the state, which is this group of socialites called the alphas, which is basically a real critique on the culture of Instagram influencers and celebrity, and the vapid nature of how people fall in love with a curated image on the internet. And the alphas really explore that kind of emptiness, but the look of pristine outward, physical beauty. So Ghostbreath's really gone into detail in the generative collection by exploring these 14 different factions.
Wow.
They all have different traits. So it's almost like having 14 collections, really. And I think having had to manage the metadata of 14 collections within one, we may have done it differently for ourselves to make life easier if we'd had our time again. But I hope that if the winter catches everybody out in NFTs and everything goes to zero and archaeologists discover the weirdos in the future, they'll find a real richness in our generative collection that really isn't there in others, because we're not just 6,000 penguins or 10,000 apes or, much as and I know you're a cool cat guy as well. I love cool cats, and I absolutely love the stylistic nature of cool cats. But the variety that we have here is so different to a collection like that. You know, we have cats in our collection. They're called battle cats.
Okay.
But battle cats are only one half of one faction of 14 factions of one collection. So we've created this almost like this family tree. You've got the weirdos on one side who've given birth to 7 different groups of weirdos. Some of those groups, those factions, have 2 different types. So battle cats is a really good example where you've got cat people who have real Thundercats vibes. They've got these giant sabers or big teeth, or they've got really big metal weapons for ready. They're war ready. But then you've also got the human cat people who have miniature cats that they throw as weapons, and then the cat people throw miniature humans as weapons. It's quite weird. So Ghostbreath has definitely gone to the depths of his imagination to pull this stuff together. And
it's like
that's
a whole
before
universe.
we start about this stuff, which is rat milk and the importance of it, which is, again, takes some explaining, but I'm very happy to go into what rat milk is all about as well.
That's the whole universe, and it's like, as you said, many collections in one collection, and I think many NFT projects don't really do that with all the backstory you have, all the kind of like the world and story building things, I guess. So
it's double-edged, I would say. I think we suffer from complexity, and I'll use a blue chip example to really illustrate the point. If I think of Pixel Vault, in fact, I'm repping my Adidas ITM merch here with punks on it as well. I am a massive Pixel Vault maxi. I have been since pretty much the comic Punks Comic 1 when I minted one back in, I think it was May or June last year, and have followed them hard ever since they came into the space. One of their biggest criticisms is complexity and layer upon layer of tokens, and really struggling to explain a single narrative thread, and that's confused people. In fact, having to explain what your project is and all its multiple layers turns people off. And often simplicity is just the easiest thing to do. Why do seals do so well? They're just seals, and you say off, and it's got a strong community of people that are doing some really cool things around the sort of character and persona of that. So very, very one-dimensional, admittedly, but like pretty powerful to keep on going back to the same meme. And we have too many memes in lots of respects. So we're playing a long game where we're hoping that people are drawn in by the color palette, the shape and design of our tokens, Matt's art style in effect, and then hoping that once we've got that audience, we can really then keep them with the depth and diversity of what we're talking about, because there's a huge story being told. We're about to tell it to the next chapter of that is being told through Super Weirdos, which is our next very small collection, admittedly, but it's primarily for holders only. But we've got a series of war bots that are being prepared for this battle royale, which we've described in the lore to our community. So that's the next stage, which is coming in a couple of weeks' time. We've got a whole evolution of these cloning machines being used to build robots of war. And before you start thinking just Mechaverse, we've got some pretty screwed up mutations of people that go into these mech bots as well. So it's very much not just a mechanized thing that you're getting. You're getting real personality, but as ever with the Weirdos, it's never quite what it seems. You get a really dark element to it as well, which you have to take a second look at and go, "Ooh, is that a?" And then you stop and think, "No, maybe it's something else." But that's Ghostbreath's style. He really does make you sort of look again and decide whether you actually like what you're looking at or whether you're freaked out by it. And I think that's why it's so distinctive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it makes people stick around, I guess, and stay. I mean, as you said, but again, does he have like a background in kind of comics or illustration, or like what is it that he makes like such distinctive art and is really into the world building and everything?
Ghostbreath's background is in motion design.
Okay.
So we talked about all the different mediums we can bring this stuff to life in. And actually, it's quite an interesting thing to bring up because we came up with our initial roadmap when we launched the generative collection. And the first thing that we thought we would be delivering was comics because we love comics. Again, being influenced by Pixel Vault and their comics, I could see a really clear path for that with the Weirdos. And I'm not ruling out comics at all, but we did in the short term decide to step away for a couple of reasons. Number one, our background is animation and motion design. So the more stuff that we can illustrate that moves, the more core it is to Ghostbreath's skills and the more that we can show off what he does best. So that kind of took us in a direction, but also we wanted to start thinking about what people tell us they want rather than just what we want to give them. And I think that's one of those principles of Web3 that is often overlooked. Here's a vision we want to give you, here's a product we want to give you, or here's roadmap benefits that we think add utility and value to this project, but they don't if you tell us they don't. Or if you want something else, you actually don't really like comics, you don't read comics, you like the idea of the number going up on a comic, but you don't actually open it and read it cover to cover. Well, okay, if that's not this community, we shouldn't push it on this community. So we started to think about what we were personally passionate about, what the community were telling us they were passionate about. And we were talking then about games and whether we could actually put all our concepts together in a more interesting way. And so we decided that an adventure game, which can be animated by Ghostbreath, which tells the story that we would have told through a comic, but in an interactive way, which you have to play, which you get cutscenes, which you get story development, and then we can cut pieces off that and give it to people in static form in the future. Okay, we could make a comic off the back of that, or we could make pieces of art that we make as individual NFTs. We could do different things once we've got the core game and the concepts and the story told through it. But it felt much more interesting to us to be able to show our world through animation and something interactive that people wanted. And that's kind of why we changed our initial roadmap, because we just felt it's wrong to just keep on going down a direction people don't want to take. Okay, it might take us longer to get where we want to go. People can say rug all they like because people like to do that when you've given firm deadlines on stuff, and we had to go back to a community and say, we're sorry, we think this could be better. We hear you, but we also have different opinions now on what works and why we should pursue different elements of our roadmap. So the idea now is that we tell this full story through as many animated things as we possibly can, rather than just static images. And it feels better that way because it's much more aligned to our previous credits as a I say a group of artists, one artist, but that's the key reason. So look, we may go back in time and start delivering comics again, but it feels to me like we're on a much more authentic path to what we set out to do in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's very important when starting a project and also building a community that you're kind of authentic and really stick to your nature and where you're really good at, I guess. So what would be your advice for someone who's just starting out in maybe community building or wanting to start a NFT project from what you've learned?
I think the advice actually changes enormously depending on the market conditions. It's amazing because, as I said, I've been recently supporting the B-Sides founders who have a load of stuff ready to go on their own project. And I've come across and, sort of jumped into their team and had lots of thoughts about how they could grow their audience. And actually all the lessons I learned from February don't apply in September, October soon, and we're not really able to turn on communities in the same way we used to be able to, because 90% of speculators have gone. Those
True.
people were never there for the core product, really. They wanted to own the token that
Number
clearly
go
had
up.
some, they were fine owning something that sounded cool, like, okay, I own a character, I might be able to get some games or merch or comics or whatever it is out of this, but I'm only really interested in the token going up in price and being able to sell it ultimately.
True.
Or flipping 2 and holding 3, or whatever the original mantra was. What was it? Flip 1, get your money back, hold the second one to a higher price point, and the third one diamond handed. All that stuff, that trope is dead. People are not able to do that anymore in the same way. So the advice now is totally different, and I'm having to go back to principles myself and think, I can't just DM 1,000 people and expect 400 responses, get 400 collab partners and conversations going for B-sides, and get them to a place where they have a critical, massive community ready for launch. We have to go about it completely differently now. And either that it's just that the numbers have to be tweaked, and the effort required to get the number of authentic conversations needs to go way, way, way up, or it's two other things: either finding people who genuinely want to be part of a space that wants to hang out as a community and talk music, and not about price, and not about the speculative nature of NFTs. So if that's the case, what are you giving them that actually has substance as a product that requires an NFT, but gives them value for money for what they spend? Because ultimately, we're not really selling anything with the promise. We never were, but not selling anything with the promise of 5xing pre-reveal like the good old days. So you're just buying a token for what it can actually give you in terms of experience now, rather than, like I say, a number go up asset.
Of course.
So this now has to be focused on what it's really about. And with B-sides, they really are music. They're not, they are NFTs. And there was almost this time when they wanted to describe themselves as Web 2.5 in a positive way, in that we've got one foot in the current music industry. So one of the co-founders, Connor McNicholas, is the former editor of the iconic music magazine in the UK, NME. And all his music industry background and expertise brings that music credibility, the contacts that can come in, and the musicians that can come in off the back of that, the conversations with, people from the industry are going to come through the likes of Connor. And that brings a really authentic group of people that want to talk music first. But are they in Web3 right now buying JPEGs, or are we onboarding them from the outside world? And it's all these conversations that are really interesting to me now. It's actually, who is your addressable audience? Is it the smaller group of people that are still here, that were still buying NFTs 12 months ago? Or are you actually taking people from the real world and saying, hey, actually what you're doing right now could be enhanced and augmented by this NFT collection because X? So actually really genuinely onboarding new people. That's going to be interesting now, because you've got to have some real credibility to what your underlying product is. And as I say, with B-sides, they're thinking very deeply about how they put things in people's hands that is related to music, and the NFT is really very much about IP and giving that IP to people and paying them for it as well from the get-go, rather than just the promise of something in the future. So quite an interesting time for people getting into the space for because timing is everything.
Of course.
Timing is, and luck, timing and luck really matter. You could have a killer idea now that would have easily raised $3.5 million 12 months ago, without really having to put much effort into creating a minting site, really thinking much about roadmap, or thinking about how you keep a community alive and keep them interested. What you have now is skeptical people who've been burnt and have lost a lot of money and are frustrated and cynical, and rightly so. And they want to know more about you. They want to know what the point is of your project and why you would insist on selling something in a space that's saturated and full of people taking L's. That's tough. So actually, it's probably healthy because it's washing out a lot of the stuff that had no substance. So if you're going to launch now, you have to have luck, you have to have substance, proper underlying products, and a really, really committed approach to how you're going to find those people in the space. So either it's a bit like finding something that generates maximum attention. So as we know, the most important thing in NFTs is attracting attention and capturing it, because you can have it for a short period of time if you're lucky, but you can't hold on to it forever. And that's what hype is. So if you think about your Frankie D gods of this world and Utes, you have to come up with something that seems innovative to people to create that cultural conversation that sits above your project. So how do you come up with the next idea that everyone's going to talk about because it feels different? And I think that's not something everyone can do, but it feels like it's almost the requirement to getting a fast track hype for your project now. Exactly. I think influencers are waning. I think the effect of influencing is dying. I think that's probably a good thing too. But the principles are the same. You still have to be able to find something that people want to get hyped about. And if you have a new idea, you've got a good chance. But you might still die then as well, because that's the luck factor. So it's either grind your ass off and just really, really put the hours in, 16-hour days in Twitter, Discord, making hundreds of conversations and converting a couple, and hoping that grind just gets you there over a longer period of time, or it's being the most innovative project with a new idea that actually gets people excited. Hey, that appeals to me. I want to be part of that chase. And so that's the landscape that people are coming into now. If they want to start up a project, it's fierce. You might not be able to raise $1 million in a way that you could have easily raised $4 million, prior to the tail off in the last 6 months. So you've got to come correct, and you've got to come with a really solid plan, and ideally have stuff that's ready on day one. So B-Sides have an animated trailer already. They've worked with a London studio called Blind Pig. It's all out there already before they've launched. They've got comics ready with professional script writers before launch, so that when they do launch and sell out, issue 1 can be ready from the jump. And so they've got content ready to deliver straight away. And people don't have to, because if speculation's gone, there's no point holding things back and saying there's roadmap surprises. Here's what you're going to get. We're going to narrow the range of speculative outcomes, so you can't overtrade on the promise of something and the hype of something. It's just, here's what it is. Do you want to buy it? We're doing it to an extremely high level, and you can either pass and because you're not into this sort of thing, or cool, this is exactly my vibe, and therefore I've got full sight of what you are doing, and I can feel confident that I'm buying something that actually exists and has some some credibility behind it. But actually, that sort of smoke and mirrors phase of NFTs, I think is thankfully dying, where you give people no information and they can trade on the best possible case assumption of what your project's going to become. And I think now that we've all come down from the hype phase, we can start thinking clearly about what the right thing to do is for projects, and more information probably gives people that chance to make proper investment decisions, which, let's be honest, that's still that's what people still consider this, much as they're not securities. People are giving you money and they expect something in return. And
Definitely.
Okay, there's not enough people to sell on to the next person for more money, but there is at least some underlying substance to that purchase.
Exactly. Thank you so much for this very big and I think good answer. Love talking to you, Nick. It was such a pleasure. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap things up?
I mean, we've not talked about your project yet, and that's something I really wanted to give you a platform for as well. But look, we just to do it for you, we've just partnered with Go Mint at the Weirdos, and I think this is exactly what we've just been talking about. people want to see really credible products to their tokens, their token purchases in this marketplace. And what you've done is really build a suite of products and give people the chance to enter a space that has actually been locked out for so many people, because not everyone has access to a Solidity developer or understands how smart contracts are coded or knows even the connections of how to get in, into the first conversation with someone that does. And so this is a product that really, it helps open that door to so many different people. So as long as you have a good idea and you've got some real credibility to your art or the thing that you want to put into the world, Gomint really helps you to actually to get it out there, which, like I say, has been sealed off for a lot of people for much of this last 18 months. So huge congratulations to you as well.
Thank you so much. I will share the links in the comments down below. But yeah, thank you again so much. It was great talking to you and learning more about yourself, about the Weirdos and the next upcoming projects as well. So yeah, thanks again, Nick.
Thanks, man. That was great.
Talk to you soon then, yeah? Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah. Good to talk. Let's do it again.
Bye.